Taylor Lewan, man, welcome to the Intangible podcast. We're excited to have you here. Thanks for, actually giving me the opportunity to sit down and learn more about your intangibles and the pieces that make you who you are.
I appreciate it, man. It's awesome to be here. Like we were talking before, a little bit before the show started, about how interesting it is that you're a 10-year vet and I was a rookie and came into Tennessee. And I think it's cool. Like, it doesn't matter like who started what podcast first and stuff like that. I just think it's awesome that athletes, current and post in their careers, taking the time to like have their voice be heard is awesome. Because coming from the world you and I come from, of being offensive linemen, you were always supposed to be seen, not heard.
100%.
And I never took that. Or listened to that in any way. And gave me a lot of fines because of it. Got in a lot of trouble with a lot of people for it. Probably put myself in some bad situation because of it. But it's awesome to see guys like you, guys like Andrew Whitworth, Joe Thomas did it for a little bit. Like, it's great to see guys take a step into the light when you're so used to being told to stay out of the light because of what you do. So it's awesome, man. I'm stoked for you.
Yeah. It's funny because I think about that with my kids. I have a son that has high function autism, and for school, it's tough. I mean, he's a smart kid, but he's put in this box. If you're not part of the 80% that fits in the box, then you're kind of like an outcast. And so that's kind of like linemen, or football players or athletes in general, where you've been told like, hey, be seen, not heard, play your sport, do your job. We're not here to hear your politics. We're not here to hear your opinions. But it's the experiences that we have, that we go through, is why I'm sitting where I am, and why you sitting where you are, is that these intangible pieces that people don't really see how much hard work it goes into it. They just think that, oh my gosh, it's just super talented. But man, that's a lot of grind, a lot of throwing up,
getting after
those dog days of training camps. And so it's good to have guys like you that I've watched a lot of your podcasts, trying to learn some techniques and things like that. And again, being a rookie in the game and it's ironically that you were my rookie coming in 2014, I think it was 2014. And now sitting on the other side, now I'm the rookie in the game. Talk to me a little bit about your rookie season.
Yeah, dude, rookie year was interesting. Getting drafted, it had a hard time because I wanted to go 6 to the Atlanta Falcons because there was that ego of, just something about the Falcons logo, the Dirty Birds, Atlanta. Like I was kind of like fired up on that idea. Matt Ryan being there as well. Are you Atlanta guy though? What's that?
Are you Atlanta guy?
No, not at all. I've learned now I'm not an Atlanta guy at all. I thought it was cool though that their facility was in Flower Branch, stuff like that, kind of away from the city. And also I just wanted to be in that top 10 category. I wanted to be the first tackle taken. I knew that Greg Robinson, who is, RIP to Greg's career, he's now in prison, but he was taken 2 overall. And Jake getting picked at 6. I was like really salty because my rookie year was Michael Ruse and Michael Orr. Yeah. And Michael Orr was just picked up in free agency. So I thought to myself, like, there's no way like I'm going to play. Like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do that. And then coming into the locker room, it's intimidating because you talk about, how dynamic shift, like you're now a rookie sitting in your seat as opposed to me who's been doing podcasts for a long time. It's interesting that everyone kind of goes to it in the sports world because like you're a freshman in high school and then you become the top dog your senior year. Then you get to college and you're in the bottom again and you work your way up. And so that's that final chapter of you kind of like being on the bottom of the barrel, doing the bitch work, like grabbing the shoulder pads, being told you're a rookie. Hey, don't talk so much. You got the guy that's literally 1 year older than you acting like he's got 10 years on you. Shout out Brian Schwenke. But like, it was cool, dude. I enjoyed it because in a positive sense, you and Ruse really gave it to me. And like, you have to earn your stripes. Yeah. Like I tried so hard, especially with Ruse, to like integrate myself into his life and like text him, hey, can you help me with the playbook? Can you help me with this? And at the time when he was not receptive and not responsive to it, I'm like, yo, dude, F this guy. I don't know if we can curse on the show, but it was like, F this guy. And looking back on it now, I realized like they brought me in to replace him. Yeah. And his job is to fight me off long enough to get his paycheck before he has to sail off into the sunset. So like as an athlete, I think we all get put into the situation where like, it's always our main storyline. We have main character syndrome to the fullest. And we believe like if someone wrongs us, there should be a chip put on your shoulder and kind of press forward and forward and forward. So I want to thank you and Michael for giving me that chip for a couple of years too. Cause you'd always be like, man, you a little fatter than I thought you'd be. You a little bigger. And I was always so insecure about my body. I was like always trying to get in that gym, but it was actually truly beneficial to my, to growing as a player.
Well, I mean, I again, a lot of commonality here. I was drafted to replace a guy named Robbie Toback. And I remember walking into the building and Robbie Toback looked at me and he said, "You here to take my job? Don't ask me. I don't know. If you have any problems figuring it out, I'm not the guy to talk to."
Yeah.
And I was just kind of like, whoa. And I respect it. I respected it because I knew where I stood with him. But I was able to watch him as I was kind of growing as a young center in this league. And man, the things that I learned from him, was unbelievable because he had 13 at the time, I think 13, 15 years in the league. And so, but that big chesting and the dog
posturing, the egos,
it was
cut it with a knife.
Yes, and it was so kind of jarring at first, and then when you watch this guy go about his craft and his work, I learned so much from him, and I'm thankful because I kind of like you, I knew where I stood and I knew how to work and get to the next step, and so a lot in common. Now you talk about had some insecurities with your body. You also came in with a head full of hair.
Yeah.
You had this hair that, you were so obsessed with, it was constantly running the fingers through it.
That's like a weird tick, isn't it? Yeah. I was always like pulling it off. Even playing like 6 years in, I'd take my helmet off, fucking throw that thing in the corner. But yeah, you're right. Go ahead.
Which brings me back to a funny story of, every team has these days where you get into the end of the training camp and, what is rookies going to have to do? The real hazing kind of went out the window some years before where, some really bad stuff was going on. But there were still some things called haircuts and, toting the shoulder pads and things like that, buying some dinners.
Yeah.
Did you run across anything with this beautiful?
What I ran across. I did. So I came in, my hair was very similar to what it is right now, but I enjoyed having the hair I have. I see my dad, he's 63 years old. He has the same head of hair as me to this day. Got some pride in it. I got some pride in it for whatever reason. I'm jealous about that. Yeah. And you guys started talking about rookie haircuts. I'm thinking, bro, I do not. The last thing I want to do is cut my hair. Literally realizing now at 33, it's going to grow back. It'll grow back at any time. And I remember hearing the story about Schwenke because he came in and had super long hair coming out of Cal, had that Berkeley, that hipster kind of vibe. And he elected to shave his eyebrows.
Yes.
And then 2 months later, shaved his head. It's like, Schwenke, what are you thinking? So it's so crazy how nearsighted football players or just athletes in general can be. But yeah, you guys gave me that haircut. You actually did me a favor. Because if I had my hat backwards like this, you guys kept this part and the sides. Yeah. So if I had a hat on, it looked totally normal, but then I'd pop it off and everything else was bicked. So I just had strands of weird hair everywhere. So I was able to do the ball cap thing for a little bit, which was nice. But we kind of got away from the haircuts too. I think we did it 2-3 more years after you guys left. And then that's when everyone was kind of we got to be inclusive. We got to be understanding, all that stuff, which is kind of a bummer. You want everyone to feel like they're a part of the team, but also you want guys to, you got to chirp and make fun and callous each other a little bit. That's that's the fun part about it.
That's part of being in the locker room.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, the jury is still out on this. You guys, you kept the tradition going a little bit, cut some hair. Did you get fined for cutting anybody's hair?
No, I didn't.
So,
I think y'all did.
So that's why the jury is still out here. Who was the person that ratted us out to the GM about cutting the hair? I'm not accusing. I'm just asking the question. Just throwing it out
so it's interesting because Ken was his first year, right?
Yes,
and
Ken was his first year.
I was his baby a little bit. I was his special little guy.
Oh yeah.
They did bring me into that room. They brought me into the room and it was him and Rustin Webster and they're like, who did the haircuts? And I was like, man, listen, I got enough problems out here. I cannot sit here and tell y'all who it was. I was like, you guys should probably guess who it was. And I'll leave it at that. And I left. Did you end up getting fined?
We all got called into the office, you know, and at the end of the day, I just took the fall for everybody and just paid the fine and kept everybody else out of it.
Very admirable of you.
But I still was always curious of who did this?
Yeah.
Who brought it up?
No, I didn't. I did not do that. It could have been, I don't want to say his name too loud, but isn't it Gabe Eichert? It could have been Gabe. It could have been Gabe.
I forgot about Gabe.
Because Gabe, the only reason why I bring that up is Do you remember in OTAs when Gabe went up to Michael Orr without him paying attention and took a selfie with him?
Yeah.
And then Steve Watterson made us run for like an hour because of it. And it's like, we don't care about fame here, blah, 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 all this stuff. So Gabe was the beautiful thing about Gabe, and he also does a show for the Oklahoma Sooners. So he does like a show for them, but he's like unapologetically himself, and he's just going to do things. And his wife, Caroline, sweetest woman in the entire world, that was her favorite movie was The Blind Side.
Yeah.
And so that's why he did that. So I could definitely see Gabe saying something. Could also see Zach Mettenberger saying something too.
You see, he's passing the buck. He's passing the buck.
I need to. I can't take it all.
Well, Taylor, you came into the league with so much swagger and so much personality. You know, it had to start from upbringing, because as an offensive lineman, you don't just develop that all of a sudden one day you walk in and you have this type of personality, infectious personality, a little much sometimes, you know, as we, but we all go through those moments of needing veterans like us to be able to say, hey, just a little bit here. But for you, it's turned into a lot of great things for you. So where did that personality, what did you build at? And what did these personas come from with you?
Well, first off, I appreciate it. All really nice compliments. For me, dude, like growing up, I had a very interesting childhood, but like one thing I always wanted to do was make people laugh. I always wanted to be very outgoing. I was very much an attention whore in the sense that like I wanted to walk into a room. I wanted to own the room, have fun with it, have multiple conversations. In high school, I would always there'd be the jocks who would be like the easiest to hang out with, but there'd be all these other unique groups of people that I would also try to like thrust myself into. And so I would gain kind of like a unique piece of knowledge from like getting to know those types of people and how unique their personalities were. So like growing up, I was able to kind of grab and piece together these different thought processes and just enjoy it and learn to find like common ground with a lot of people. And then when I got to Michigan, I was loud, I was obnoxious, I partied a lot, I worked super hard. And I was always like, that was kind of like my defense mechanism, was always being able to, if I don't lose a sprint and I can lift the most weight, then it doesn't matter what I do.
Yeah.
I'm going to be all right. You have like these kind of weird ways to like tell yourself that all the things you're doing are okay. And then my senior year at Michigan, they kind of sat me down. I came back from my senior year, I had the opportunity to leave and I didn't. And they're like, hey, if you were going to stay, like they basically want me to take on this like all-American type of personality. Hey, we're going to clean you up. We're going to have the fresh haircut. You're going to shave your face. You're going to do all these things. And I really bought into it because I was like, oh, this is what I need to do. Because it was always like, because I'm so loud and I'm always like kind of a shotgun theory guy when it comes to making jokes, that people are like, this guy's really immature, which is very fair in a lot of ways. But I always wanted to be the best. So I would sacrifice whatever it needed to be in order to be the best at my craft. And so if they're like, hey, you're immature, you need to do X, Y, and Z, I did those things. And it ended up biting me in the ass. Like there's nothing worse than putting on a mask and pretending to be something that you're not, because with that comes so much more insecurity of being like, I know who I am, but the way I'm acting, I feel like I have some sort of imposter syndrome because of that. So I get into the league, and Ken Wisnott, we kind of touched on a little bit, like that was his first draft pick. A lot of people didn't like his draft pick because they had the 2 tackles already. And he really wanted me to be like the best possible thing I can be. So there was Robbie and Puff and all these guys that were like, you need to act like this as well. So I bought into it for another year.
Yeah.
And I slowly learned, like, I ended up having success my rookie year. Mike got hurt. I ended up getting it for him. It was kind of a win-win for both of us because I was able to make like all rookie team, and he was able to get that paycheck for another year. And so, because his whole goal, ended up telling me his plan was like to fight me off to week 1. And I didn't know at the time, like if you make it to week 1, your contract is guaranteed. You're on the roster, it's over. Right. So it ended up being a win-win. And then I get into my second year, and I'm still trying to be this all-American guy, clean cut, but I'm still like going out with the boys and acting like I'm still in college. And that's when it really started to bite me in the ass. And I learned quickly, along with meeting my wife, that like, if I'm just unapologetically myself, the good things and the bad things, one, I feel a whole lot better about me because now there's no longer any skeletons in my closet. Like I get to live kind of face forward in front of everybody. And I get to like, I get to have the joy of like, hopefully making somebody laugh that day, or hopefully like making someone feel like good or whatever, right, or make fun of them and they feel bad, whatever mood I'm in. And that's when my career really started to take off in the direction that I wanted it to, because I didn't have this piece of me that was weighing me down, trying to be something I wasn't. Yeah. So that's basically a little synopsis on my personality.
Well, you talk about masks, man. It's like, my whole life I spent wearing a mask. I think this is finally I just got into a place where I started talking about I was diagnosed as a kid with dyslexia. And so for as long as I never wanted anybody to know. And so I have so much respect for people who can start to realize, especially early on, like, hey, this mask is not who I am. How do I take this off and become who I am? Because that's the only way to live in life, is to be who you are.
Yeah.
And doing it within the bounds that actually, that you could be proud of. And so, when you start thinking back to the mask, before you put that mask on, you were the big personality. Your dad, he played college ball. He's a D lineman. And most of those guys are really funny.
Yeah.
Most of those guys. Was your dad a funny guy?
Dave was funny. Dave was like Midwest funny in the sense that he was great with the dad jokes. He had a good time. He get a couple cold pops in him. He'd be having a good time. My mom was really the funny one. She was the one that I remember for a few years. It's interesting how we compartmentalize our lives. Like, I feel like I grew up on a ranch, but really we lived there for like 2 years, but it just felt like my childhood. And we would have all these people around always doing these schoolings for reining and stuff like that. And she would be holding court, and we'd be like by this fire pit, and everybody would be like boozing and having a good time. A bunch of like old school cowboys smoking cigarettes. And I thought I thought it was so cool that my mom was like holding court in the situation. My mom was she was probably the funnier one. They both had a nice little personality, but I'm definitely the most outlandish and most outgoing of all of us in the family.
Well, you started out in California and then you moved to Arizona. Take us through this. You said ranch, but a little bit earlier, before you even got to that ranch, the ideal of, this is who I am, where I want to be. Because when I look at, growing up in Mississippi, this mental toughness, this tough piece, I see that in you, this toughness about you. Like, there had to have some things that happened in your life that start to transition you to that toughness aspect of it. Or was it something that you were trying to hide from at an early age?
For me, so you bring up California. I was born in California. I was born in Sacramento. And at 3 years old, we moved to Dallas, Texas for 6 months. And then I was in Arizona until I ended up going to college at Michigan. And, my childhood was not the best. I had both my parents, as hard as they tried, like they didn't necessarily understand how to love kids. They had their own demons that they weren't able to kind of create their own tools in order to not have that happen again in the next generation. They kind of projected their own issues they had with their own family onto us. Just a really toxic relationship. It was really hard for both of them. My dad and my mom, they ended up getting divorced. They got separated a few times. The way they told me they were getting divorced, I had a group of friends over and they called me downstairs and we're getting divorced. And I'm just thinking to myself, I want to go play with my friends. Man. So you don't necessarily know, you look back on it, you're like, wow, it's crazy. Obviously I've been married for 8 years. You've been married for a long time, but you just think to yourself, you wouldn't want to handle things like that. Yeah. But as a kid, I'm just thinking about my friends are outside right now. How do I, as fast as possible, get back to my friends, not knowing what's doing? And then, my dad struggled with me. I was a very difficult kid. I remember him calling my younger brother the golden boy all the time. And that my brother would come home, he had straight A's. He was that 12-year-old kid playing baseball, making diving catches. He was the athlete of the family. And, I was always kind of pushed to the side, or pushed out of the light a little bit. And I'm sure there was because of my personality, I struggled with that quite a bit. And then my mom, she was emotionally just not available in a lot of ways. So for me, I got into a lot of trouble in middle school. I ended up getting it sounds way worse than it is. I had a charge for assault, theft, battery, and robbery. Sounds real bad. I took a kid's iPod and punched him. That's what happened. And I do feel bad for the kid. And then I got probation. I ended up breaking probation.
So you know what iPod is. All right.
I know what an iPod. Okay. Yeah, I had the swivel. It was actually a Guns N' Roses one too. It was black and had a red little swivel on it. It was the coolest one at the time. And I broke probation for assault right after that, my freshman year of high school. But when the first time I got in trouble, my dad's like, hey, you got all this anger. You need to put it somewhere. So I went to this boot camp type thing. It was just a ranch down the street. And I would wake up at 4 a.m. This one guy named Garrett, who was a cowboy, would be first day, he'd be like, you good digging holes? And I was like, I guess. He's he hands me a shovel, he goes, go dig holes. So for that day, I would just dig holes.
So no structure, no plan, not planting trees. It's just dig holes.
Go dig holes. Essentially just putting me through work. I was referred to as the barn bitch. I was saddling horses, unsaddling horses, walking them when they needed to cool down after their competitions, like mucking stalls, like doing all the things. Like I was doing all of the possible bitch work I could do. And I did that for the whole entire summer. And my dad puts me into football. And I remember it was like middle of July at Cactus Shadows High School in Cave Creek. And the head coach was Chad DeGrenier. And I'm not like a fat kid, but I'm definitely like a weirdly shaped individual. Like I haven't grown into my body yet, long, skinny arms, heavier torso. And I wanted to quit. And my dad's like, all right, if you want to quit, I'll be in the car. That's the head coach right there. Go quit. And he goes and sits in the car, and it takes like 2 hours. I finish the workout and I get in there and he's like, listen, like you can quit if you want now, but I just want you to know what it feels like to be on the other side of like being successful in something. Cause to this point in my life, I have not done anything that someone would go, oh, good job, Taylor. It was always like, oh, Taylor's getting in trouble at school. Taylor's getting in trouble outside of school. Taylor's being loud and obnoxious, all these different things. So we ended up going 8-0 my freshman year. And that was all right. I was ineligible for the last game because of my grades. And then my sophomore year, I got brought up to varsity. We go 15-0 win state. And that's kind of when I started to realize like life isn't just this thing you're doing. It's this thing you're working towards. Like there should be goals and ambitions and all these different things. And my goal was like, oh shit, football is dope. Like I really enjoy doing football. I stopped getting in trouble. My grades got a little bit better. Like things were kind of working out for me. People were starting to pat me on the back a little bit. I'm like, oh, this feels good to know that like people care about the things you have in success. And like, I wasn't like a great student. My vocabulary still to this day is not, I'm not like the smartest guy in the world, but I thought to myself like, yo, if I do good at this, like who knows what could happen? You know, I didn't even really watch football. I was so obsessed with like, you know, freestyle motocross and stuff like that. And I ended up having to transfer schools and I have 0 offers going into my senior year. And I play 2 games at left tackle. And I take those 2 games, I send them out. And in 5 weeks, I was an Under Armour All-American, had 20 plus offers. And that's when I was like, holy, like I got offered by Utah State and I was like, oh shit, I'm going to the league. Like that is what's happening now. That is like, so there's been like, you talk about like upbringing and all that. Like I had a very difficult upbringing, not the most difficult one in the world. I've heard so many more horror stories than mine. I had a really hard upbringing. And my parents like did the best they could. They just didn't have the tools to give me what they needed. Yeah. But I think if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be sitting here with the level of success that people, you know, say, oh, that is successful. I probably wouldn't have that if it wasn't for like the trials and tribulations of being younger. Yeah.
I mean, I think when you think about, you know, you're so astute to kind of be able to look back on those situations and say, I can't blame my parents because they were operating with what they had.
Yeah.
And so when you can look at it from that standpoint and then focus on how do I grow as a human? How do I keep striving to get better in life? Then now you're solely in a place in the driver's seat. Yeah. And that's what we always have to continue to remember about ourselves is like, how do I get my parent in a driver's seat to drive my life forward? And so kudos to you. So when you start to kind of, you know, have you ever really sat back and looked at your story? Because I think as athletes, we have a hard time looking back and patting ourselves on the back for our accomplishments. Have you ever looked back on this story and to where you are now and said, you know, this was a defining moment of my life? And listening to what you just said about this guy giving you a shovel and getting you to work towards something, you know, would you say that was one of the defining moments of your life to know that like, you know, in order to get somewhere, I have to work?
Yeah, you bring up reflection and humility. Like that is a very difficult thing that I've noticed with all athletes, including myself. I have, as I've gotten older, I have definitely tried my best to sit back and have much more gratitude towards the things that are happening for me. Because it's just like the job I have now with Bussin is just like, dude, I have the best job in the world. I literally work with my best friend every single day, and I get to go to essentially I get to do whatever I want and I get paid to go do it. Yeah. And that's as cool as it gets. And I have like my great wife and great kids. So like I truly think I might have one of the best lives in the world. But as far as like looking back at those things, it's interesting to talk about. Like you bring up Garrett giving me the shovel, and that is like a core memory. So I'm sure it's a huge piece of it. But there's so many things of the reasons why you make it. A lot of it's luck and a lot of it is like work ethic. And like as much as I did like have this like crazy past of like partying too much and getting in trouble, it's like once I figured out what the goal was, I never let that goal get taken away from me. And I think the biggest changing factor for me, like there were multiple things. Like high school, one of the biggest things for me was transferring to Chaparral in Scottsdale.
Yeah.
There was this kid there named Craig Rowe. He was like the number 60 in the country. I knew a bunch of schools were going to come in, and so it was my opportunity. I had to leave my friends. It was my opportunity. Like, okay, if I want to do football, this is going to have to be it. Without that, I don't make it, because the JUCO system and all that wasn't really what it is today.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for Charlie Regal, the head coach there, and if it wasn't, I go to Michigan, I do whatever I do there. But if it wasn't for meeting my wife, like my career, I would probably still played a similar length of time because of talent. But like the accolades, the individual accolades, the being in a position of leadership on a team, having the ability to lead guys in the offensive line room, making Pro Bowls, having an opportunity to almost go to a Super Bowl, like those things like don't happen if I don't meet Taylor. Because Taylor is, whenever I would date women, it would be, it would be a comfort zone, like trying to fill a void of like feeling like, okay, I want to feel loved.
Yeah.
So I'm going to date you. So I have someone that I feel like loves me.
Yeah.
And then once like the season was over, I would literally break up with them. I would feel like, okay, I need to go train. Things are more important than this. Taylor was the first person I've ever met where I was like, I need to elevate who I am in order to be able to deserve a human being like this. And once I met her, like my drinking kind of stopped. Didn't stop. Like I actually drink way less now than when we first met, but like, I didn't party as much. There wasn't a whole lot of going out. There wasn't, the drive to like the FOMO kind of started to go away a little bit. And I was like, oh, I feel very at peace and calm and grounded being around just this one individual. That's when things for me really started to take a turn. So that's probably like the biggest changer of my entire life.
Man, shout out to wives.
Shout out to wives, dude.
And Canadians.
Yeah, for real.
Another thing we have in common.
Yeah, no doubt. Your wife's from Victoria?
Vancouver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Taylor's from British Columbia as well. So yeah, dude, shout out West Coast Canada. I don't know about the rest of y'all out there. I don't know about the rest, but the West Coast Canada rips.
Man, that's real cool. Like the reflection piece and the humility of being able to be vulnerable to like talk about that is really impressive, which gives me a lot of my hairs are I'm getting goosebumps because I can really see your growth and who you have become as a person. And not saying that you was a bad person, but we all have things that we got to work on and grow. And so to hear you talk that way is definitely a treat to me, which tells me that I did have a little bit of a leadership in the locker room.
Yeah. Well, dude, I appreciate that. And it's so interesting. Like humans, men especially, like have such a hard time of being vulnerable. For me, it's like, I'd rather just tell you exactly how I feel and how I got here.
Yeah.
And that way, like, whether you understand me more or not, it's like, at least I feel like I gave you an opportunity to understand me.
Right.
And that's like a special thing for sure. It's football. It's like so hard. This toxic masculinity world we live in. It's so difficult to like feel, a certain way with these guys, because you're just always working towards like being the toughest, being the strongest, being the best. And there's not a whole lot of room for vulnerabilities.
Yeah. Now we were talking earlier about, some of the work that I'm doing with language and taking these language models and helping you understand who you are. If I gave you taking, some press conferences or some type of interview you've done, or anything you've written, and I presented you with a profile that says, hey, Taylor, here's your scores on some behaviors, stress tolerance, anxiety, personality, what would that report look like?
Could we go like categorically? Like, could you give me a category and I'd tell you what I probably think?
So, and we'll go personality. So openness, agreeableness, conscientiousness, extroversion. Yeah. And so from an extroversion standpoint.
Yeah, whatever the highest number is. Yeah.
Off the charts.
That's a 10. Yeah.
Off the charts.
Yeah, I feel more uncomfortable not speaking than speaking.
Yeah. Agreeableness.
What is agreeableness?
So agreeableness is being able to take the structure, follow that structure, and do what's been asked of you to do it.
If we're doing a 1 to 10 scale, probably like a 6. I would probably do my best to do exactly the way you did, but then I would be like, well, I think I could do it better if I do it this way. And then I would do it a different way. And
then we get down into a subtrait of that, authority challenging. What would you be?
10 being the highest I would challenge authority. I've never done well with authority. I've never, like we had a coach, Keith Carter, and I've been openly like disliked Keith Carter. But he would have this like authoritative figure about him, very similar to Bob Bostad, but I was too young to understand Bob Bostad.
Okay. Oh yeah.
but yeah, like I had a very difficult time with people being like, Taylor, you better do this. Cause to me, I don't know what it's an ego thing or what it is, but I would just be like, I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to do it a different way. Or you say, hey, Taylor, you can't do it. I will do it. And then hopefully figure out a way to do it without the worst case scenario coming out. So fighting authority would be a 10.
So do you think, getting this at an early age would have helped you kind of like figure out what that structure and a little bit more awareness about yourself so you can handle those situations a little bit better?
Yeah, I would, I definitely think like having anybody, it's so difficult to reflect personally unless like you're consciously trying to reflect.
Yeah.
But if something's put in front of you that has data points and will say, okay, this is why we scored you. And you can be like, well, this number's wrong. Be like, okay, this is how we got to this number. If you can explain to an individual how you got to this, it allows them to, without even realizing it, now you essentially have to reflect on yourself. I think a lot, especially with football, I can't speak on every other sport, but with football, self-reflection and growth as an individual is one of the least done things in football.
Tough.
It's very difficult to do because you're so wanting to be the best. You want everybody to think you're the best.
Yeah.
And when there's a small little, I can't say the word, in the armor, it's tough.
Yeah. It's so true. I mean, I think back all the time to, as I was coming through this whole process, like if I was just honest and open, the first thing in your mind is like, oh, they're going to cut me.
Right.
This is what's going to happen. But at the end of the day, what I learned over this time is that those are the things that like got my anxiety so high that my body and things started to falter because I didn't know how to manage that.
Yeah.
And again, thoughts are thoughts. It's okay to have them. But how do you manage those is the challenge that I think we have as athletes.
Right.
So
I got so weird about my actions and like wanting to not hide anything. I would mess up and I would go and tell whoever I could right away. There was I don't know if I've told this story before, but my rookie year, I at the Arizona Super Bowl ended up doing a little bit of that booger sugar.
Oh man.
And got in trouble. And I actually failed a drug test and I got put in the drug program because there was an assault case I had in college that got finished. I got put in the drug program, then I failed the drug test. So it was like this whole revolving door. And instead of like I called my agent and I was like, I got to tell the GM. I have to tell the GM. They're like, do not tell the GM. Don't do that. It's supposed to be anonymous, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no. And I went and told the GM and I was like, this happened. I messed up and it's not going to happen again. And I feel like because of that, it actually worked out better for me. Same thing with John Robinson when we had the first overall pick. Like everyone was talking to pick this Larry Tunsil kid. And I went to John Robinson's office and I was like, I'm a left tackle. So if you want to spend your first overall pick on a right tackle, go ahead. And I feel like we've never really had the full conversation of whether that actually changed his mind. But like less than a week later, he traded the pick. So who knows? I just feel like being open and honest is the fastest and easiest way to get shit done.
Man, and it sounds like you had that a little early in life. I mean, it's taken me a long time. Like I said, I finally just opened up about being dyslexic. And so, being able to remove those aspects have opened up so much more of my world.
It's freeing, isn't it?
I mean, so much freeing than I ever thought. And, I didn't realize it was such a weight weighing me down. And so, when you talk about, these aspects of draft picks, like, were you involved mostly in some of these other draft picks that's kind of come along the way?
No, not at all. Not at all. I think John and Vrabes, they were the bulk of my career, having them as coaches. Those guys were so from like the Patriot way. There was not a guy in there that was going to be like, we need to take this guy or take that guy.
Well, you had the personality to walk into the office and say, "Hey."
Yeah, I would say like, "Hey, we should get this guy," and they'd be like, "All right, go back to the way
downstairs."
Yeah, exactly. But they knew how to like John and Vrabel. I think understood me the most from a head coaching like the head coach figures. I put John in that category because I only had 2 GMs. But they understood how to handle me. It's like, all right, Taylor, sure. Yeah. And they would chirp me and have fun with it and move on.
Well, we're going to get there. We do a segment called the 2-minute going into halftime.
Okay.
Which is soft tossers. Just, let's see if we can get some points here. Not necessarily, again, it's not like the fourth quarter. So, first question for you. These would be some rapid fire questions for you. Best prank that you ever pulled?
Best prank that I ever pulled. Ben Jones had this like fart spray and he was getting a bunch of people with it. And so I went in and I put it in his truck and it simmered in there in the middle of the sun all day. So when he got in his truck, he was mad and he actually thought it was 3 other people and pranked them the next day instead. Shout out Ben Jones, dude. I love you.
That's awesome. All right. Toughest defensive end you've had to face?
Chandler Jones. You can pull up week 1, 2021. You can find out real quick. I was like the 5-star.
I was like, at that game too.
Yeah. Well, that was terrible. It was the worst game I've ever played in my life. Any part. It's like watching the big black 5-star athlete that's 6'5", 250 going against the white 5'11", 160-pound offensive lineman. I was the 160-pound offensive lineman. It was the most vulnerable piece of prey I've ever felt in my entire life. I've never felt that vulnerable in my life.
I know this is supposed to be rapid fire, but were you in your head, man? What was happening in those moments?
Dude, I was like, get me the fuck out of here. I was like, oh my God, I was dying. Dude, it was my first game back. It's the only football game I've ever played in my NFL career where I was not nervous before the game. Because I was like, yo, you're so back. I had this chip on my shoulder, like, you just came, this is your first game back from an ACL. Like, all the Titans fans are excited to see you. Like, people really are going to know you're him. And I was not, bro. I got murdered. Absolutely murdered.
Last one. Best road memory.
Best road memory would have to be 2019 New England Patriots. So we would bring this Nintendo 64. And me and Jack Conklin and Ben would just sit in the room. But like a bunch of us would get in a room. No, dude, 2016. All the offensive linemen, we would stay up to like 1 or 2 in the morning, even before noon games. And we would just play cards. We would play Boo and just hang out. Yeah. And it was one of those times where like 2016, 17, 18, 19, our offensive line was so elite that we would get no sleep before games. And we would go in and just body bag people. And it was like, middle of the year, we just knew like things are going to go well for us. We had Russ Graham. It was the best. So playing cards in probably Jack's room or Ben's room before a game was the best.
That was also the 3 years you made Pro Bowl.
Yeah. That was, I think my loudness, well, obviously played really well, but like having because I was so loud, I think I was the most noticeable of the group. Like any one of those guys could have made the Pro Bowl as well. Like Quentin Spain was playing well. Ben Jones played at a Pro Bowl level. Josh Klein played at a Pro Bowl level. Jack Conklin did as well. Like all those guys did, but I think because my personality, I kind of took away from their individual success because of that, looking back on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just to be clear, you do need sleep to be successful. So
absolutely, she could sleep. Absolutely. It was a weird time.
Perfect. That's great. That's great. Now we're going to jump back into your transition out of the league. We all have to make that transition. That transition is not easy, but wow, did you make it look easy? You started this podcast, Bussin With The Boys. It kind of started while you was playing a little bit, I think. But it really took off to another level that, has superseded what I would have thought, would have been the transition, because I was for sure thinking that you were going straight to, TV.
Yeah.
And to be able to do your own thing has been impressive. Like, how did you come up with the idea with Bussin With The Boys?
So, in 2018, Will Compton was a free agent from the team formerly known as the Washington Redskins. He came over to the Titans, and there was like this tweet or this article that came out that said Will Compton and Taylor Lewan are going to be best friends based on Will's Twitter game and Taylor's off the field antics. And we met, dude, and our friendship really started. We call it the Breakfast Club. It'd be me, him, and a guy named Mike Campanaro, and we'd sit and just talk about podcasts and all these things. We really became best friends very quickly. And so at the end of that year, we were in a win and get in game against the Colts. Whoever won that game was in the playoffs. Whoever wasn't, their season was over. Colts body bagged us. We had no chance the entire time. Tough. But after that game, Will approached me and like we go to a little banged up. We go to this like Chinese buffet restaurant. We're kind of sitting there. It's like 1 a.m. And he's like, yo, I want to start this podcast. I want to start a podcast. And I've always wanted to, but I'd feel way, way more comfortable if you did it with me. And I was like, yeah, dude, that sounds awesome. I would love to. I kind of thought it was lame a little bit. Like I thought like, no one's really doing this, like a podcast. I don't know. But I agreed to it. 3 days later, I get on a plane. I go to California to start training for the 2019 season. And he calls me. He's like, hey, if you were going to do this, like, I just need to know that you're for sure going to do it. Otherwise, I'm going to have to start this thing on my own. I was like, no, dude, I'll do it with you. So we get there. I get back to Nashville in like April. And we meet with this production company. We're talking about studios and how it's going to look and what everything's going to look like. And they're like, well, there's this bus out back. And I was late to the meeting. And Will goes, Will goes, well, I hate it. I hate the idea, but Taylor's going to love it the minute he sees it. And I got in there. I was like, dude, I'll buy this bus regardless of whether we do it as a podcast or not. I'm just going to put it in the back of my house if it doesn't work out. So I spent like $2,000 on the bus, another $8,000 on like gutting it out and figuring everything out. And yeah, that's essentially how Bussin' With The Boys started. And it was interesting because there was a lot of like collaboration. Will wanted to be a very serious podcast, like a motivational podcast in a lot of ways. He wanted to call it The Den. And every time we called The Den, I would always just say, that's a working title. And then we said Bussin' With The Boys. And I remember telling my wife that, and she's like, that name is lame. Like, that is a terrible name. But we couldn't think of anything better. So like Bussin' With The Boys kind of started. And then I didn't know what to think of it. I think I even made a joke that like, yeah, this will be like, if we make any money off this, like I'll just let Taylor do whatever she wants with it. Like I don't think anything's going to come from this.
Yeah.
I thought it would just be fun for me and my boy to do. Like, and then like, couple episodes in, Jalen Ramsey goes viral for talking about how he used to DM the guys he was playing his girlfriend, their girlfriends. And then Vrabel said he'd cut his dick off for a Super Bowl. And that's when like Bussin' With The Boys, like we had like all of a sudden like started getting listeners. And Barstool called and we're like, that's crazy. Like the Barstool called us and they came and like Erica Nardini, who was the CEO, and a guy named Gaz, who was like Dave Portnoy's right-hand man. They met with us in August. And like one of my days off, and then through the season kept talking, and then that Super Bowl in Miami, we signed with them, and we've been with them for 4 years since then. So like, it kind of like fell into my lap. I was always a guy that never had a plan B. Like the minute I knew football was going to be an option in college, it was an option for the rest of my life. Like I was a guy that drank the Kool-Aid so much of like, I love football so much that like if I were to die on the gridiron, it was an honorable death, that type of thing. Like I had that type of mentality. So this in a lot of ways like fell into my lap in a lot of ways. And it really goes to show like a lot of times it has to do with the relationships that you have, because we had very different careers, similar length, but very different. Like Will was an undrafted cat, like fought and clawed and scratched his way to like getting on a 53-man roster and ended up becoming a captain on special teams. And he's like in this world where he's going to like now be in the position where he has to be that 90-man roster and fight to the 53.
Right.
And the year 7 or 8. So he's thinking about the next step. And I happen to just like, yeah, I'll do that with you. And it's become like the transition, because shortly after that, 2020, I tear my ACL. 2021, I play okay. And then 2022, I realized my ACL was done incorrectly and I have to get it fixed. And that was essentially the end of me. And so it's like, while all of those things are happening, Bussin' is like gaining traction. People are loving it. People are watching it. We have these fun segments. We have these interesting guests.
Yeah.
And we had Donald Trump on the podcast.
I know.
And you're just thinking to yourself, bro, that is insane. Like I caught a lot of shit for that, but like we like to have like a presidential candidate, someone who was a president, is just like on your show is just nuts.
Yeah.
So like that's where you kind of like, I catch myself reflecting in gratitude right now, because it is sick. It is so much fun. That's how it happened.
Yeah, that's a cool story. I will say there's an episode that still sticks out in my mind from Bussin' With The Boys, and I think that was kind of circling back to where we started. Michael Roos and I was called out on your podcast for veteran leadership. I want to give you an opportunity to kind of give us an insight into, what was your thought process, with that comment? Was it,
I can't remember my exact comment. It was probably like, you guys were bad leaders.
Yeah, it was something like that. I don't remember exactly. It was something like that.
Well, we were 2-14.
You're young.
Yeah, we were 2-14. So that's not good. That's not good on the resume part. I think it kind of goes back to what we were saying, where I thought I was mistreated in a lot of ways. You realize some of the good things that come out of it, kind of like you poking my buttons, pressing me a little bit. That was nice. But the one thing I didn't like that Ruse did that I didn't appreciate was kind of things we talked about, where I would reach out to him quite a bit about learning the playbook.
Yeah. And
even though it's a game, like I remember, we drafted Jack Conklin and he was 8 overall. And the thought process at that time was like, do you get rid of Taylor eventually? Because that was 26. That was before I made my first Pro Bowl. And then, but every question Jack asked me, like there was always a competition. I would always do my best to help Jack. I always would try to like help him understand the playbook, even if it was at the demise of my own self, because I thought, I'm a bet on myself type of guy.
Right.
And then, we drafted Isaiah Wilson 2020. He did not pan out, but we still, there's like, do you replace Taylor? Like all those different things. So there's a constant battle. And as I got older and older, I was like, I understand why Ruse did that. I understand why you did. Cause like, from your guys' perspective, it's like, okay, this this loudmouth rookie is coming in. He is here to take my friend's job that we've been in the league in the same amount of years. And so I understood that quite a bit. But we were so bad, and we didn't there wasn't a whole lot of leadership on that team. There wasn't a whole lot of guys you could look at and be like, I want to be like that guy. I saw Michael Ruse, and I would look at him and I'd be like, no, I want to be so much better than him. Because when I watched Mike was so gifted, but he was so laissez-faire about his approach. And I was like, I'm not trying to take anything away. He had a 10-year career. Like, he missed like one game. Like, he is incredible. He made a Pro Bowl. Like, that's all awesome. But being at his point in his career and watching his work ethic, I was like, as a rookie, I'm like, well, that's not who I want to be. So to me, I look at leadership as a rookie, I'd want, guys take you under your wing. I want to be able to look at guys and be like, hey, what's their work ethic like? Well, they're grinding, they're doing, what are they doing? I want to feel to myself that, okay, they're doing these things that I want to take from it. In 2014, like, you were, did you just get there? You
no,
came
it was
from
my
Seattle?
second year.
Your second year, you came from Seattle,
Chicago.
Correct? From Chicago. So, like, you're still getting your feet wet. It's Bob Bostad's first year.
Yeah.
And so he was a unique character. I appreciate him, even though, like, I'm sure for you guys, you hated his guts. Like, he was an asshole. He really was. So, like, it just seemed like everything was in disarray. You truly have to be like a Peyton Manning-esque leader to put that team in a good position to be successful, because we didn't have a lot of talent.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of individuals. We didn't have a lot of teammates.
Yeah.
And I noticed that especially when I got to like the 16, 17, 18, 19, because Ben Jones came in. And when I saw Ben, I'm Ben signed to the Titans. I'm in Arizona, I'm training. And I get a DM from Ben Jones. And it's like Quail Hunter. Oh, I can't say it. I don't want to say his name. I don't put him out there. But he DMs me and says, hey, this is Ben Jones. Like, I can't wait to work with you, blah, blah, blah. And I could see the way Ben operated. And I was like, this guy is a guy that's taking every single person and making sure that everyone is on the same page, everyone understands. And it reflected in a massive way in our team, along with the addition of Russ Grimm. So as much as I was negative towards you guys, I think some things were fair and some things probably weren't, based off my own ego. But you guys were not set up in a position to be successful on that 2014 Titans team. Well, you really weren't, because we were bad. Yeah,
I mean, we had 3 quarterbacks that we rotated through. But also too, I mean, I validate some of that too, that you're saying, like, this whole thing is it's tough when you come into an organization. I come out of Seattle, great organization, and then to come into this situation where I'm at the tail end of my career, so I'm not even the guy, I'm not even the starter, and so to really, to kind of take the lead on those things, you kind of rely on your starters, your guys who are, been there in the organization for a long time, and so I can relate to having some of those same type of feelings. But my approach was always for you is to understand how to be a pro.
Yeah.
And so, and also, I'm not saying it was right or wrong, but, I'm saying right for you is, you had a big personality. How do you kind of knock a first rounder down a little bit so that they don't get the big head and go out and make bad mistakes? Yeah. And so my poking with you was about that, and like giving you a hard time so that that, like, hey, you're still a rookie. Let's come in this game and like learn how to do it the right way. And then hopefully you'll be able to pass along these things to other people. And so, but your personality was so strong, and you were in such a difficult position because you were there to replace a guy who played for 10 years. I mean, he was the same team too. He was the second left tackle ever in history?
Me, Ruse, and B-Hop collectively played 30 years for the Titans at left tackle.
Which is wow.
It's crazy.
Yeah, unheard of.
Dealing with me as a rookie couldn't have been easy. This is not like a point fingers type situation. This is like I'm just busting your balls. I'm just giving you a hard time right now. It's not that serious. I think it's like, it is an interesting thing to break down though. It's fun. It's interesting to look at because everyone only knows their story. Yeah. So when I see you operating the way you are, like, I'm sure there's a bunch of things going through my head, but why is this guy, I understand he played 10 years, but why is he talking to me like that? Not realizing we were in Seattle, which you knew how a franchise put it run. You're probably going home to your wife being like, honey, we made a mistake coming here. Like, this is tough. No disrespect to the Titans.
No disrespect. It was a different era. It was a different time.
And you know what? It's okay to be critical too.
Yeah.
I think it's so crazy when people get their feelings hurt. Like if Amy Adams Strunk were to see this clip and her be like, oh, F Chris and Taylor. It's like, well, Amy, like the team was not in a good position then. Like you've had massive success since then. Like let's still remember that. But like you always have to keep a critical eye, especially when you're in a part of $1 billion business.
Yeah. I was asked to be critical. I was critical when Mike Munchak was head coach at the end of the year. You know, I sat in his office. I was critical about what I see because I've seen what good look like. You know? And so yeah, you're right. It's okay to be critical. And so I'm actually glad we had this conversation because now I understand some of your perspective where you was coming from versus like a quick clip.
Yeah.
And because I can also validate that some of those things that you're talking about from a leadership standpoint, that was a lot of individuals. And how do you kind of galvanize a team when you don't have that guy, especially when you don't have your quarterback?
Yeah.
You know, and you rotating through a lot of different guys, you know, and I think things started to shift a little bit when, you know, love this guy to death, Fitzmagic. When Ryan he kind of brought that kind of leadership cachet that I think the Titans were needing.
He's got that vibe for sure.
Yeah, you know, and it reminded me a lot of Hasselbeck. Hasselbeck had that same type mindset, and so guys gravitated toward that. And so again, for me, I had to bring it up.
Yeah, no, I love that you did.
Because I love that
you did.
And then it turned out I was going to just make a joke about it, but it really kind of opened up a conversation to something a lot deeper than I was not expecting. So appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you had Bussin' With The Boys. You start to look at, you have Mike Bringwell as a head coach, a guy that you guys had a unique relationship. He's on the podcast. He's, wearing the, daddy shirts and things like that. Yeah. You guys had a really good relationship. When I look at Mike, who played in the league, who's, won Super Bowls, coached at a high level, got some structure coming out of New England. It doesn't come across as when you look at on paper as a player coach, but when you see the relationship that he has with players, man, he's a player coach, but he's able to build a culture with structure in place. Tell me a little bit about his leadership style.
Yeah, Mike's a very unique character. He's unapologetically himself in every facet. He's an asshole. To be honest with you, he really is. Like, and I mean that as a compliment too, because like he will go in and he'll put up film, some uncomfortable film to watch that's bad, and he'll be like, "What are we doing here? Like, this is not what we teach."
In your O-line room,
or the team meeting room,
with everybody in it,
for everybody in the janitor to see.
Ooh, that's uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's very uncomfortable. But he would do a great job of like showing you the mistake you made, making fun of you so you feel so less than, but then also taking an opportunity to coach the technique that you're supposed to be coached. He was fantastic at having you understand the rules and situational awareness of like 2 minute. And if you're in a hurricane situation and you have to get the field goal team on and the offense off at a fast paced way because you have no timeouts and it's 4th down and the clock's ticking under 18 seconds. All of these things he would beat into your head to where when you got into the games, you would understand situationally where you were at all times.
Yeah.
He was a great leader of men. I think, he's funny. He is funny. I hate saying that because he's going to see this clip. He's funny. He can be mean sometimes, but he can also understand where like you've been beaten down a little too much. Go back to that September 2021 game. Not only do I get destroyed, the Cardinals get destroyed. The Titans get destroyed. We lose that game in a bad way when everyone thought we were going to be really good that year.
Yeah.
He calls me. He's like, "I need you to come to my office." I'm thinking you played so bad yesterday that you were going to get cut now. So I go in there. And he goes, "I want you to know, like, yeah, you played bad, but like, you're not the reason why we lost that game." And that to me meant so much because you feel everything when you have a bad game. You have 1 sack, you feel like the world's ending for you a little bit, and let alone giving up 2 sacks, multiple pressures, get put on your ass a bunch of times. Like, it was really, really bad. He understood like how defeated I was to where like, he was like, "Hey, yeah, you played bad. We didn't lose because of that. And because like, you need to just continue to get better, get that knee right, all these things," and kind of like patting you on the ass on the way out. And he had another great situation in 2019. We were 2-4, and he basically came in and was like, "Whole world thinks you guys are dead. Like, this is a funeral. We're having a funeral for the Titans. This funeral team, there's no way we'll ever come back from it." And he just has this great speech about how nothing else matters other than what's in this room and what we believe in. We end up going to the AFC Championship that year. We were 2 quarters away from going to the Super Bowl and beating the Chiefs. He is a fantastic leader. I think it was such a mistake letting him go. I like Callahan. His story's still unwritten. He still has a lot that he could get done. But man, Mike Vrabel really was a guy that like he could have won a Super Bowl for the city. I believe that.
Yeah, we definitely hate to see him go.
Yeah,
but now he's back in the game.
yeah,
You know, you look at the Patriots' history. Now he's back at home and has a quarterback.
Yeah, Drake May is a stud.
I think Drake May is going to be a phenomenal player in this league. You know, what can we expect from the turnaround, and how quickly you think he can get this thing turned around? Now having a quarterback and being back at a place that knows him very well.
Well, I think it depends on who his OC and DC are going to be. That hasn't been decided yet. These guys are going to understand football. They're going to understand. They're going to be. It's going to be a tough, hard-nosed football team. Like they're going to be a Belichick era-esque, maybe even a little tougher.
Yeah.
I would temper expectations. It really depends. You have $140 million in cap space. If you go and you utilize that cap space and get some seasoned vets that you can bring into the building that are going to be great leaders, they don't have to be the most talented things in the world, but like great leaders that help, you know, corral the guys that might be straying away from the main goal, then I think they'll see themselves having success. It's a tough division. I think Miami had a down year, but they're going to be better. The Bills are going to continue to be great. Congrats, the Jets are there, so you're going to get a couple wins a year. That's great. But yeah, I think they're going to be solid. I think it's going to take more than a year, but I think they're going to find themselves in another position to, you know, not necessarily have, you know, 6 Super Bowls in the next 20 years, but like they're going to be a team that you have to worry about the Patriots when you have to go up to New England.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a very tough team.
Yeah, I think you know, him being back there, I'm giving him 3 years. He'll have this thing back on track.
I agree.
And so I'm excited to see what happens with him. You know, when you start talking about good leaders, and I'm going to ask you a question as we're getting closer to wrapping this thing up. I'm going to ask you a question that, you know, us SEC guys, you know, we know who we root for in the big moments. Now, you got Notre Dame coming up, Ohio State coming up. You got Marcus Freeman, who's you know, when we're talking about Brave as a leader, is like a leader of men. I truly believe that he's a leader of men. And now you know, they're here in the national championship game. Who are you rooting for? I mean,
it's an interesting question. I think I'm going to, as a Michigan man, I'm in a win-win situation.
Tell me more about this.
If Ohio State wins this national championship, we beat the national champions. And we won the national championship last year and we went 15-0. Like we own Ohio State no matter what. Like that's great. That actually adds to us being successful. We're the only unranked team to beat top 15 teams consecutively since 1993. That was the University of Arizona. Fun stat for you kids watching at home. If Notre Dame wins, Ohio State has nothing. They have nothing. They don't have a win against Michigan. They don't have a Big Ten championship. And they got to play a couple extra games. Congratulations. That's it. And they have a couple of trophies that don't matter at all. So for me, it's like I'm in such a win-win category. I would love to see, you know, when I watch Michigan versus Ohio State, like obviously Michigan shouldn't have won that game. They end up winning, which is amazing for me. But you see a guy like Jack Sawyer, who is the defensive end for that team, who was born in Columbus, Ohio, grew up scarlet and gray. Like the guys like that, I want them to feel that success. A guy like that who like truly lives and dies for his program. It's so new now. It's such an old school thing because NIL is like taking away like the pride you have in your school because so many guys play for so many different schools. I would love to see it for guys like that. That would be cool. But then you brought up Marcus Freeman, and I saw he played for Ohio State.
Yes,
he has a really cool story of him wanting to get into coaching because he loved the game. And he was talking to Jim Tressel, who is one of the most famous head coaches for Ohio State. And he's like, I want to be a GA. But then right after that conversation, the Colts call him. And Tressel says, hey, coaching will always be there. You play as long as you can because that doesn't last forever. He drives down to Indianapolis and he, you know, does a workout, hits his physical, and they see an enlarged valve in his heart. Mm-hmm. And right then and there, his career is over. Like, we're not going to sign you. And there's going to be 31 other teams that also do not sign you because of this specific reason. And he says he's driving back from Indianapolis to Columbus, and he's talking about how he's like smiling, and he called it a God thing. How like it's always been coaching. It's always been like his way to stay in the game. That's going to be his golden ticket. So to see that and his halftime against Penn State, his speech, like that's the type of shit that gets me so fired up.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, yo, I hope he gets one. I hope he does. And I think like the last time Ohio State lost to Notre Dame was like 1963. Lou Holtz was born in 1964. Wow. So like or 30, might be 35, 34. I can't remember. It was like really a long time ago. I might be getting those dates wrong, but like it'll be fun to watch. I think Ohio State runs away with it. I think they win by more than 10 points. I think it's going to be a bloodbath, but I'm stoked for both teams.
Yeah. But you're rooting for Ohio State just because you could say
no, I'm rooting for Notre Dame. I'm rooting for Notre Dame, but I don't mind if Ohio State wins.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, because we get a hard rap in the SEC because, you know, it doesn't matter how much we hate a team, but when it comes to the national championship and you're like playing against a different conference, who you rooting for?
Let me ask you a question. I know this is your show. Is the SEC dead?
No, heck no.
The guys are 1-5 in bowl games against the Big Ten. NIL is now, so now everybody can pay players, not just you guys. Like Ole Miss, Kentucky. It's tough. I feel like Illinois would beat most of your guys' teams.
Dude, you guys are asleep at the wheel if you think the SEC is dead.
I think you guys are done.
No.
I think you guys are
no
cooked.
chance. No chance.
Like
It's
Georgia,
a reset.
Georgia will always be good.
This is a reset year. You got to remember, like, this whole NIL thing is new. This whole thing of like dispersing
But it's not new for y'all.
What it is, it's very new for us. What are you talking about?
It's not new for you guys.
But everything is the depth has been dispersed in a way that we haven't been used to. Mm-hmm. But now that we kind of just like when you get a young quarterback come in the game, he can go in, he could score, he could run up and down the field on you, and then all of a sudden you get 4 or 5 games under your belt. You're like, okay, I know how to lock this down.
Yeah,
that's what's about to happen in the SEC. It's going to turn next year. You guys will see a completely different SEC, especially when it comes to bowl games.
Who's going to win? Who's going to win the national championship? Who's like your team in the SEC next year? Because I don't see a team that's going to be good.
To be honest with you, you know, I think you know Georgia will be back on top. I think Georgia will be back on top, and I think you know I'm kicking myself because Ole Miss kind of squandered away. We had a championship roster. You know,
really could have done it.
Yeah, we had a championship roster.
It was you guys in Ohio State that spent the most money on NIL.
Yeah, I mean we were.
Lane Kiffin's your coach.
Lane Kiffin, yeah.
What do you think of him?
I like him. He's a great offensive mind coach. You know, and I mean he's turned our program around. You know, and which I'm excited for because when I got there, David Cutcliffe was there, and we started to do some really good things. And then Hugh Freeze came along, and then we kind of went back downhill, and then he came back and kind of stopped that slide. And you know, he's done some good things, and you know, this whole NIL has kind of helped Ole Miss, you know, from a recruiting standpoint. But you know, again, like I said, like when you kind of understand how losing certain type of depth, and you can understand how to kind of keep that depth, some of that depth in house. SEC is going to be back. Don't fall asleep at the wheel. Don't fall asleep at the wheel.
A lot of money up in the north.
Yeah, don't fall
asleep. A lot of money in the north. But here's your problem too.
It's chemistry though. You got to remember, chemistry is a big part of it.
The southeastern region of America is the hotbed for talent. There's no doubt about it. That's a big reason why you guys got a lot of the talent. But now with your 5-star athletes who have to sit behind another 5-star athlete for a year, those guys get frustrated and they leave. So now you guys are lacking depth when you had Alabama, Georgia, always reloading.
I agree.
Tough.
I agree. I mean, that's what always our problem at Ole Miss is the lack of depth because they were scattered not going to Alabama. And they were okay with sitting behind Alabama, you know, sitting behind a 5-star for 2 or 3 years to get it 1 year to get there and go to the league. Yeah, go to the league. And so now with that, it's kind of, and I don't know necessarily if it's about getting to the league now. I think I think it's about playing so that, hey, we can increase my NIL.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if I'm going to get to this next level. I'm going to work like I'm going to get to the next level, but I'll need to maximize right now while I can. And so I think it has a lot to do with that than necessarily, hey, I want to get to the next level. You know, that's going to be there. I'm with you. But that money is fleeting.
I think I have one more question for you. How much did you get paid when you were at Ole Miss?
0. No joke. I will tell you a story. I
want to hear a story.
I did have a coach, not Ole Miss. I did have a school come in my home and put a briefcase on my table with $100,000 in cash in it. And my mom...
You shit yourself.
Oh, dude, I was like, what the... I've never seen that much cash in my life. I mean, my home, I could stand on one end and put a hand on this wall and touch the other wall. That's how small it was. And my mom looked at the coach and said, Coach, I appreciate the offer, but my son's not for sale. He's not a piece of meat.
That is awesome. And what a move by your mom.
I mean, power move.
Yeah.
And a move that we kind of, and be honest with it, pissed me off because I'm like, they leave and I'm like, Mom, what are you doing?
I am
like,
for sale.
I said, we could have taken that money and still went where we want to go. Cause again, it's not NIL as it is today. I was like, I said, they're not going to tell them themselves. What,
Right.
what are we doing
What'd she say
here?
to that?
She's like, son, if you take something from somebody, you'll always be looking over your shoulders, wondering when they want to come back and get it. And I was just like, I'm gonna hate it when you're right.
Yeah,
okay.
you're
So I say that, because again, I was highly ranked, #1 recruit in the state of Mississippi, in the top 5 in the country. I think I was #2 lineman in the country that year. And there was a lot of people want to throw a lot at me.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, my mom, she didn't play that game. And you know how it is. Grew up in the South, good Christian mom, and single mom. It's like, we've been broke this whole time. Maybe just wait till you get to a place where you can afford it. Don't take anything from anybody.
Yeah, that's a hell of a mom. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I would have took that money.
Yeah, and now I'm sitting here looking at it like, oh my gosh,
yeah.
If this was for real back then,
bro, you would have got broken off. You really would have got paid so much money.
It would have been unbelievable.
That'd been awesome.
Well, Taylor, as we start to kind of wrap this show up, man, I really appreciate you sitting down. We always kind of like to end on these different intangibles, and I'm gonna give you a couple. I normally give people just give me one intangible, but because of your personality, I think you have a couple things at play here when it comes to intangibles that you've leaned on. What are 2 intangibles that you can look back and say, these are the intangibles that's gotten me to where I am today?
Intangibles that's got me to where I am today. I think betting on yourself. Like, if you are able to realize that no one wants you to succeed. No one wants you to succeed more than you want yourself to succeed. So you can't be looking to everybody else to be like, please help me do X, Y, and Z. If you want to achieve something extraordinary, you have to be the one to put the work in. You have to be the one to go through all the channels to make sure that thing happens. This might be a bad one, but I don't necessarily believe in a plan B until it's the most necessary thing in the world. Like, unless you're like, this is for sure not going to happen, I have to pivot. Because I was always had trouble. Everyone's like, what are you going to do after? What are you going to do after? Obviously, we talked about how it ended up just kind of falling in my lap. But I was like, if I take anything out of my plan A, it's going to take away from, the overall of plan A. So betting on yourself, and then choosing what your passion is going to be, and not listening to people being, negative. Because I think humans, when you say, I'm going to be, let's say you want to be an actor. People are like, oh, that's great. You want to be an actor. Good for you. That's amazing. Then the minute you start trying, everyone's like, look at this guy trying to be an actor. Like he's so bad. He's so X, Y, and Z. It's like, if you were able to block out that noise and just focus on you're going to find yourself in a much better position, whether it actually is acting or not. You're going to find out who you are in that process, and it's going to work out in a way you may have never saw before.
Yeah. It's kind of like me doing podcasts. It's going to work out for me.
Like, I'm sure when you thought about a podcast at first,
absolutely,
you were
not.
like, this is lame.
Not me. And it wasn't about that. It's just, this is not me. I don't do podcasts. But now that I'm doing it, I feel that I'm getting better at it, and I'm excited about it, because I get to talk to people like yourself that people don't see all these things that you go through in life, and they only see, again, you show up on a Sunday, you play. They hear a couple stories here and there, but they don't really know who you are and what drives you. And that's what I'm excited to kind of share and have people understand and talk about.
Yeah, that'd be cool, man.
Yeah. My last question for you, again, going back to the top, you were a rookie when I was at the Titans. Now I'm a rookie sitting in this chair. Now you've sat through this podcast. I'm not above constructive criticism. One piece of advice you'll give me as I'm on this new journey of doing podcasts.
Dude, I first off, I think the way you ran the podcast was awesome. But dude, I love it. I think podcast is such a new, it's like not as new anymore, but it's such a wave of the future that like the mainstream media is dying, whether it be like in the real world or in sports. Like, there's so many things that are like changing, and like you see, like even ESPN, they have to pivot. They had to go get McAfee in order to like feel more comfortable about their situation. And then McAfee, he's like the GOAT of this world. He's awesome. So this is where people are coming now. They want to hear real conversations. They want to hear real thought processes. And if you're wrong, it's like either lean into it or just admit you're wrong. Yeah. Like, I'm wrong all of the time. All of the time. I say stupid shit all of the time. But it's like having fun with it and enjoying, like, I don't know, a week-to-week basis, like a new game every single week.
Yeah.
and how much you can make out of it.
Have you ever been vulnerable about some of your childhood stuff in interviews or anything like that?
Yeah. I think I've always kind of been like emotions on the sleeve guy. So I've definitely told similar stories to the one I told on here. It's just, I know there's people that have struggles, whether it's bigger than it seems to them or not. And it's like, yeah, like people probably will see me and think they'll see what I made in the NFL, and they assume that I make a lot now, and they assume that everything in my life is perfect.
Right.
But there's like so many struggles. There's so many bullshit situations that you like can't control and that suck. And it's like, if I can tell you that my shit sucks too, it's like now we have common ground, because all of us have have these issues in life.
Yeah.
So I have no problem with talking about all the bad things. I kind of feel bad for like my mom and dad sometimes, because I'm like, I kind of soil them. But like my dad and I, like we didn't have a relationship until like my second year in the NFL. And then my mom and I haven't spoken to my mom in 7 years. I actually have not said this. I talked to her for the first time last week in 7 years.
Wow.
And we met again yesterday. And like, we're now like, she met my daughter when she was like my oldest daughter when she was a baby. But she hasn't even met my second daughter. And so now we're like integrating her back into my life. Yeah. Cause it's so easy for me to hold a grudge. Yeah. It's so easy for most people to hold a grudge. It's so much harder to talk about, hey, you hurt me. This is why you hurt me.
Yeah.
And then allow them to tell you why you hurt them, because no one's ever perfect in a situation.
Right.
Like, I take our situation, for instance, like I'm just saying things from my own point of view, not knowing what you might be thinking when you see that clip.
Yeah.
And it's good we had that conversation. I know it was like not the biggest deal in the world. However, it takes away this like, the smoothness of our interactions. If I don't know something's bothering you, so communication is so important. Yeah. And I also think about my kids, like I was thinking about this, like my kids, if they get older and they like don't like me for whatever reason, I would hope I would be able to go to them being like, this is the situation I have with my mom and I figured it out and I took the steps, like, and look how great our relationship is now. Yeah. And that's kind of the hope. Like I'm doing it selfishly for me. Yeah. But I'm also like, we're healing in a lot of ways. She's also healing because of it. Yeah. Because so sometimes doing things for yourself are just as good as doing things for others.
Well, they say all the time, put your mask on first.
You're right. Yeah. When you're in the airplane.
And so, I've been on this journey now for the last 2 or 3 years, just working on myself, being selfish about working on myself. And it has opened up my world. That's why I say I can talk about stuff that I never talked about before, but it's opened up this world of like forgiveness and healing childhood traumas that you don't even really realize is there, that comes out in relationships. Yeah. And
it takes your significant other the one to point it out sometimes.
It does. But what happens with your significant others who's pointed out, you bring up your defensives. My walls come up and then I want to defend everything. Yeah. Defend. And it's like, wait a minute. This is not an indictment on who you are as a person, but these things have hurt me. Right. Just real quick, just like a vulnerability piece of what I just kind of understood with my wife is, dude, I was present because my dad wasn't present. So I was going to be everything in my kids. I was going to be in my kids' life, do everything that I can do to be with my kids. That's what I've done. And my wife would always have these things. She would always have these things to say to me. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? I'm here. I'm doing. And it just kind of over the last, year realized like, because I could see my dad finally, who he is, it's like, I haven't been emotionally present. I didn't even know what the word was. I didn't even know what that really meant. Yeah. Until I started really diving into it.
Because you're in the house doesn't mean you're actually in the house.
Right. Yeah. But emotionally present, I wasn't there. And it didn't dawn on me until my dad did something that kind of really upset me. But I didn't really say anything. I just kind of like let it go. And then was having a conversation with my therapist and talking about it and realized like, when they asked me what bothers you about what he did, it's like, well, he just can't be emotionally present. And I was like, well, where did that come from? Yeah. I'm sounding really smart right now. Yeah. But then all of a sudden there was a mirror right back at me. It's like, that's what you do to Catherine. And I was just like, oh shit. And so then it comes to repair. So like the thing that you're doing with your mom is like, you guys are working through this piece and you're now working through repairing. And so then I had to go back and it's hard as shit to go to my wife and say, hey, I've never really understood what you meant when you were saying certain things. Now I do. Yeah. I haven't been emotionally present. And then she just started bawling.
No shit.
And I'm just like, why can't you just say that to me?
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes it's so difficult. It's like, bro,
She-
I'm dumb. Like, talk to me like I'm dumb.
Right.
Like,
I'm sitting there like, I'm now just realized, like, if you just said that word emotionally present, then I would have took me some time to figure it out because I'm not that smart.
Yeah.
But I would have figured it out. Now I'm sitting here in the most challenging position because it's hard. Got to let the ego go, the pride, all these different things got to be pushed aside to look at a person and say, I'm sorry, I got to repair this because I didn't realize that I wasn't emotionally present with you.
Mm-hmm.
Now I do. Now, what can we do to work on so that you know that I'm constantly working on being emotionally present? And so, so I can understand that with your mom and like the healing piece of it.
Yeah, the conditioning part of like just being in sports too.
Yeah.
Like, there's not a whole lot of time to be emotionally present in things. Do you have you ever read a book called Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday?
Yes,
that's a great book. Yeah. I think Ryan Holiday is fantastic.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, and the dyslexic thing. What was that like a thing that for you that you were just like, I don't want to feel dumb?
Well, it's to be honest with you, you got several knocks there. For me, it was, I didn't want to be, I remember they tried to put me in special ed when I was in grade school. Like, I'm talking like I'm from Canada now in grade school because my wife said it all the time. But it was around, second, third grade, they tried to put me in a special ed. My mom was like, absolutely not. He's not going to be different because he learns different.
Right.
And she didn't let it happen. And so you go through school and then all of a sudden you got to read in front of the class and then you overthink it and you kind of like scan through the book and kind of like, okay, get the context so that you can go back and then you misplace words, you put words in and then you start to sound like you're dumb.
Damn, I might be dyslexic. Because everything you just said was exactly what I used to do.
Dude, I was worse.
Remember the game of popcorn in elementary school?
Yeah.
Where you read a paragraph and you pop it over somebody? Yeah. I'd be always reading a paragraph ahead, be like, please, God, don't call on me.
Yes, I'm like always just doing that. And so it was one of those things that you growing up in the South, you don't have tools to help you navigate this thing that, no one really understood at the time. They knew that, you can be diagnosed, but again, when you don't have the resources, you're not getting the tools to help you. And so I'm like, well, I'm gonna focus on something I can. That's why I was great at farm work and mechanic. I can take an engine out of a car. I can take a transmission out, brakes. I can do anything when it came to mechanical stuff. I was really good at. And so when football came along, I didn't want to play football because I knew I was good over here doing this. But my mom made me play football. And then I was like, oh, shucks, I'm good at this. Okay, this is going to become my new hiding spot.
Yeah.
And so I started to hide in football because I understood football. It made sense to me.
Yeah.
And so in school, I was just kind of like bobbing and weaving, like, as long as I can get the material and get it to myself and not be around people, I was good. But the moment you put me in front of the board or like, call me out to read in front of the class, man, I just went
downhill. Panic attack type of situation. Yeah.
And for a long time, that kind of just, it kept going and kept going and kept going until it just like, get into the league. And just like, again, I didn't want to, people think that because I was a first round draft pick that, oh, well, you wanted to go to the league. No, I was just trying to get through school and college so I can like find somewhere to get to a good job.
Yeah.
So that I can, again, hide again.
Right.
And then all of a sudden I'm drafted. It's like, oh, shucks, I got to talk in front of people now and Mike and I got to do this whole thing. And so it was been a challenge for me most of my life.
It was a struggle to not just read and write and learn stuff, but it was also a struggle to speak in public.
No, it wasn't the struggle to speak. It was a trouble of like, where does my mind eye go when something comes at me and I got to think about it?
Yeah.
And do I look dumb or come off dumb?
Yeah.
I never wanted to come off dumb. I know I'm a sharp guy, but at the same time, like if, you think in your head that everybody's being critical of every word you say, because that's what happened to me, my freshman year. I was sitting at a lunch table and they gave me a number. We were sitting in a group of kids and they were like, oh, we're having a conversation freshman year in high school. And they said, oh, what did you have for breakfast this morning? And I said, oh, I just had a bowl of cereals. I put an S on cereal.
Yeah.
And man, everybody just like
lost their mind.
Lost it, made fun of me forever. And that was the moment I kind of like retreated.
Really?
I retreated, man.
Isn't it funny how like
embarrassed me so bad.
Yeah.
That it gave me this complex of speaking in front of people and adding, or not enunciating right, or adding a syllable here, or whatever. It had me screwed for a long time.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting, man. That's so funny how you don't realize, like, saying cereals. Like you think about it now as an adult and you're like, that was not a big deal at all. But like the way that made you feel had to be just horrendous. To feel so alone in that moment, all those kids laughing at you.
Man.
God,
man. Those are the things, like little micro traumas that you have in your life that you don't even realize that you've kind of like compartmentalized, but it has shaped some areas in your life that, for the good or bad, it's like you feel it and you hide, you run away from it. And, again, that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to start a podcast, because I didn't want to be critiqued by people all the time, or if I say something, I don't enunciate something right. But I finally kind of got into a place where, like, I've been reading Mel Robbins' new book, Let Them.
Let Them.
Yeah. And the Let Me Theory. And now I'm in a place where it's like, let them.
Yeah.
I'm going to be me because I know what I'm doing, what I'm working on it's going to help change some kids' lives or adult lives. And I'm going to be who I am.
See, I always struggled with critiques from like football. Anytime like I finish a game, I would go to that damn search bar on Twitter and I'd type in Taylor Lewan and I would just get body bagged. Or even if I thought I played a great game, I'd see 10 great comments and then one that was like, this guy sucks. And I'd be like, God, you're terrible. And that helped condition me for the podcast world, because people are, the internet's undefeated, dude.
Oh, like 100%.
You're going to get drugged through the mud at some point.
Yeah,
like people are going to find this clip in 10 years when you have the biggest podcast in America, and they're going to start typing cereals in your comment section, just trying to, for whatever reason, bring you back the craziest drama ever. It's just nuts, dude. This shit happens. But that's awesome, dude. I'm stoked for you. Yeah. I'm stoked for the situation too. All those boys in, where they at? Where's your producer at?
He's in Austin.
Shout out Austin, dude. Shout out people in Austin doing this.
Yeah, man. Taylor, this has been awesome, man. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me, dude. This has been cool.